Hey guys, how are we doing? Crypto Insight UK here, bringing you back another video. And if you're tuning into this right now, you're going to see that the markets are down pretty heavily off the back of some PPI news that came in much higher than expected. Why does this make the market dump? Well, it essentially means that the producers' prices are moving up, which means that there's a signal to say that inflation could be higher than expected, especially going into the future, which means it's less likely to see rate cuts in September, which is what obviously creates looser monetary policy and makes markets go up, because then that liquidity flows into people have more capital, and then they buy assets. So that's why essentially that's the dynamics behind why things go up and down based on PPI and CPI, because people are pricing what the dollar's worth, looking forwards, and how much liquidity there's going to be in the dollar, and then that in turn has a direct correlation to asset prices. So looking actually though at what's happening, first off, let's look at the S&P. The S&P has opened, and we have a long of the day to go. I was waiting to see what happened on open. It's opened 7 minutes ago. We have opened lower than like yesterday's open. I'll take us to the daily just to show you. So we were projected to open up here. My computer's going to go nuts. I'm going to turn it to silent. Let's see if we can do this while we're on. It's probably going to show you that on screen, but let's see if that does anything or not. I don't know. But we are projected to open higher again today. The S&P yesterday closed at its highest ever day. And we have only opened slightly lower. To say such a monumental miss on PPI expectations, I've actually never seen a miss this high, or definitely haven't for a long period of time. So what the repercussions of this might have for the markets generally, I'm not really that sure. We saw quite a big liquidation event across crypto. Again, this could definitely change by the end of the day in terms of we could recover, or it could continue to the downside. And that's one thing that we've been discussing a lot on this channel, and I'm going to get into that in a minute. But what I'm basically trying to say here is we've had an overreaction in crypto compared to what we've seen in the legacy financial market based on the news. So does that mean the legacy financial market needs to price the news in better and come down further? Or does it mean that crypto's been manipulated and pushed further down than legacy financial markets for a specific reason or not? So we can argue both sides of the coin as always at the minute. And I think that my Doge trade reflects this view completely. We've seen large volume on Bitcoin come through on this negative news, or perceived negative news. And we're in the oversold territory on the hourly RSI again. And the last time we were in this territory was here, and we did have a little bit further to go to the downside, but pretty close to a bottom when we last saw that. And price for Bitcoin is at 118k. And I would presume we're somewhere near the fixed range volume profile again. In fact, yeah, we banged straight into it again, which is where most traders use this to enter or exit positions if they're offside, essentially. So if people thought we were going to dump like here, for example, and they were in a short, they would wait until the price came back to this area, close the short, and then potentially go long if they then change their view on it. That's why like the fixed range volume is quite a useful tool. It's where the average trader is in a position, or the most volume has come in, so the most money has changed hands, be it between long, short, whatever. So with all this in mind, like ETH is still very close to all-time highs. Structurally, hasn't really broke anything. This is kind of a weak structure. I thought this yesterday. Does it continue to come down further and take liquidity below us? Let's discuss the liquidity pools. So this is Bitcoin to start with. Yes, we've got this liquidity above us at 129,000 on the hourly, but it's denser around 106,000. Does that mean we're going to come that low? I don't know. The liquidity is there. I'm just saying that. In terms of the daily, though, the liquidity above us is significantly larger than that below. We're on Bitcoin daily liquidity now. We did just wick into this liquidity. Normally when we wick into this liquidity, you do continue to take it, and it will continue to the upside. So is this just a fake out before we see a more explosive rally? Again, I'm not sure. We'll go to Ethereum and we'll discuss the same things. Ethereum has pretty much hit my 5 waves to the upside that I discussed. I've been discussing for weeks really. And if we look on the hourly time frame, has Ethereum pulled back and pulled any liquidity? Again, the answer is no. We've taken a slight bit, but could we come down for ETH as low as like 4,100? Definitely in discussion before continuing higher. However, if we look at some other altcoins, and I've been discussing this over on X, I've said The top 10 seem to be gaining more than today, or obviously before the liquidation event. Today, the top 10 seem to be gaining more than like Bitcoin and ETH. So, but they still have liquidity above us. So this is Doge, obviously one of the top 10, and the asset that I've got a trade on. Significant liquidity above us and not tons below on the hourly. Oh, this on the 5 minute. I don't know why it does that to me. This is the hourly. We did take that liquidity actually above us, but there is still significant liquidity above us, but there is also liquidity below starting to build on Doge. And on the daily, it's way larger to the upside. The liquidity pools above us are much, much larger. So let's just quickly check in on that as well, just so I can show you. There's liquidity here at about 29 cents, which blows anything below us out the water. In fact, you'll see that people started to close some of their long positions on this last move down here. So again, could this be a bit of a trick to the downside? And that story and that rhetoric is the same across altcoins generally. We'll look at XRP. We'll look at XRP quickly. XRP on the hourly has more liquidity above us than below. If we look in terms of like deep pools of liquidity, look at how deep it is above us compared to that's below us. And the same on the daily time frame if we look at that as well. And that's the same for Cardano, BNB, Tron. All these tokens look pretty similar. Let's just get this into the 3x as well. And more liquidity has actually built today so far during this liquidity event, as people probably try and go short on the back of this news. Now, whether they'll be right or wrong in the short term, again, I don't know. And as I've said, I think the Doge trade is pretty much summing up my thoughts on the market. I'm about break even again on this trade when we fluctuated. I think I got in around this sort of area here. We fluctuated massively to the downside. We then went quite largely in profit. I'm on a 2x leverage, so not much leverage at all. And then now we're back at about break even. And since this sort of time period here, I've just been saying I'm not sure what's going to happen. And the market has basically acted in accordance to that, basically chopping sideways. But I do think out the back of this, we see significant upside before we see a more substantial correction. Now, whether you want to call an ETH correction of a further potential, I'm not saying it happens right now, but potential 8% from here, substantial, that's up to you. I don't know. I think we could see like a 30-40% correction at some point in this cycle. But when that comes, again, I don't know. But I do think we see more to the upside before that. I wouldn't expect Bitcoin to see much more than a 30% or 40% correction. But I would like to see us put in significant higher highs before that, maybe 150 or higher. And then we may see something like that. Same for ETH. I think ETH could push towards 6K, then maybe have a 30% correction, which would be massive, and the market would panic before a potential blow off top. But I also think that we are getting close to a potential parabolic rise for altcoins generally. We're looking at Bitcoin dominance breaking down. We've been discussing this for days. I don't think this is the time to panic. I think this is probably a time to add to positions and continue to compound those positions in the thought that we do have this parabolic advance or blow off top sort of period backed by volume and strength, which I think comes when ETH goes into price discovery for altcoins specifically, and when Bitcoin starts to close above 125,000 up towards 135,000. That's when you can be a little bit more concerned of a pullback. I think between here and there, we're going to always get pullbacks along the way, and if we can get larger pullbacks off the back of news like this, it's perfect for market makers and flushes out a lot of leverage. Cardano is still green on the day. You like it or don't like it, that's fact. Yes, we've still had a pullback for Cardano. It was about 10% up, but it is still 2% up on the day, even with such a big miss in PPI. And another one that I've obviously been tracking and talking to you guys about a bit on this channel is Mantle MNT, which has been one of the leaders, obviously being an ERC token or within the Ethereum ecosystem. We had this range, we swept the lows, we swept the highs, and we came back and back tested 50% of the range and then pretty much pushed out of it again to the upside. We've got no confirmations yet. We've still got a lot of price action to happen today, but I'll keep you updated over there on X as to what my thoughts are. Looking at the S&P just before we wrap up this video, let's see what's happening. It does look like the S&P is trying to recover green. We did have a gap for the S&P that we look to have closed anyway. So let's take us to the daily. We had a little bit of a, where was I looking at this gap? I'm sure I saw a gap. Crispy chan shit. We've opened below, and let's see if we can close an all-time high again today. Obviously, it's a big ask from here. We might have some chopping. We might have some further pullbacks to the downside off the back of this PPI news. Knowing Trump, I presume he'll come out and try and counter this news somehow, some way, or maybe it's a time for a little bit of a cool off. On either side of that argument, again, I'm not sure. It's interesting to see Bitcoin dominance not really taking a pushback to the upside on this, however. This should indicate strength for altcoins, because normally when we have a significant pullback, altcoins bleed off much more than Bitcoin. And right now, ETH is holding stronger than Bitcoin is. And that is an interesting thing to pay attention to, whether you like ETH or don't like ETH. Altcoins historically bleed off harder than ETH on a bleed, and Bitcoin dominance is telling you, and so is ETH, that there is more strength in altcoins than in Bitcoin right now, which should indicate this parabolic rise, when we get out of this choppy period, is still around the corner. And that is what I believe. I've not changed anything in my positioning. Still heavy in Doge. Still obviously completely all my XRP and spot. I'm waiting to see this parabolic move to the upside, where people start to get crazy. I said this morning, it doesn't feel like we're at all-time highs. People are still being very tribal across different altcoins. They're throwing shit at each other. They're saying our link's going to flip XRP. The narratives about XRP not moving, and it's never moved, and all this sort of stuff, even though we're sitting literally at all-time highs. And it's the first time we've done that in like 7 years, and we've never consistently closed above all-time highs. Even in previous cycles, it was quite a fast move up, and then we just chopped for 7 years. This cycle, we've moved up to all-time highs and sat above it, which is a sign of strength. Sat in and around the all-time highs is a sign of strength. ETH is pretty much at all-time highs. We're a few $100s away. Bitcoin's at all-time highs. Most of the top 10 crypto assets have set or have done massive percentage gains this cycle. BNB, Tron, Sol hasn't, but Sol ripped from like $8 to $200. What else have we got in there? Cardano hasn't, but it still had a decent move. XRP obviously has. What else am I missing? USDC and USDT by market cap have both set all-time highs this cycle. I was doing it off the top of my head. It's not really working today. But you're getting my point. The reason I'm in Doge is because I think it has some catching up to do. Doge historically, I don't need to go over it again because I feel like I talk about it every day, but historically has significant moves, and it normally is when Bitcoin has had its all-time high break and then starts to cool off a little. Bitcoin has actually set a new all-time high yesterday, and then has a bit of a cool off today, back into the range on some bad news for the economy. So let's see. There's still a lot of the day left to go. People are sitting here now saying, oh my God, I'm panicking. Ether looks to be recovering extremely well so far. The largest volume we've seen on a 4-hour candle for ETH by a long way, and we still have 2 hours, 10 minutes of the candle to go. This could be a significant candle. If ETH somehow managed to turn green here, I will be all systems go bullish. So watch out for something like that for Ethereum. I'm not saying it will, but if that happens, it will be very exciting. I'll be sitting there thinking, wow, it's time. We're about to see something explosive in the markets here. So with all that being said, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please do hit the like button and subscribe if you did. I don't have anything new to share with you. I'll share all my opinions and new thoughts over on X first, just because it's the easiest way to communicate. I'm actually traveling tomorrow, so you won't see a video from me, but I'll hopefully make one over the weekend at some point when I'm getting back to Dubai. Thank you to everyone who watches my content, and I'll see you in the next one. Please do share it with a friend if you enjoy it as well. If you've got any questions, please leave them in the comment section. Peace up, A-Town down, as Crypto Insight UK would say.